So I had a kind of an interesting, somewhat instructive experience, or at least I'm going to try to make it instructive. I picked up, I was trying to get time to pick up some 3D printed paddles, those keyboard paddles, for a custom circuit board that I'm designing. And there's a local 3D printing shop, does really good work, pretty good prices, and obviously local, like local. So I printed with them, and I realized that I was pretty busy, and I didn't really have time to get there. And I called them up. I was like, oh man, it's been a few days. I'm gonna call them up, and they're like, oh well, we're kind of closed today, but try back on Monday. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll figure out a way to get to them, because they had kind of weird hours, and obviously I kind of had a restricted schedule. So the guy called me today and said, hey, I have your order here. I'm gonna put it in the locker, and you can just come in and get it, even though we're closed. I was like, okay. Do I need a code for the locker? And he's like, nope. There's a video camera there, so we don't have to worry about anyone stealing stuff from it. So I was like, okay. So I picture a like a what is it? The post office, like an open lobby and lockers, and it's got a camera there to make sure no one comes in and like wrecks the place, I guess. So I get there, and the door is not open, and the lockers are outside, and they're clear. So they're completely transparent. You can see right in. You can see if it's empty or if it's not. Also, the locker doors have keypads on them. So he said there's no code. It's like, all right. Grab onto the door, pull on it, and out pops my stuff. The door opens right up. So this was not what I was expecting, but it is rather instructive. So the idea that you can create, consider the implications of if you had set up this locker system so that it was opaque, it was blocked out, and there was a sign perhaps that said surveillance in progress. Well, now you've set up lockers, you don't know what's in them. You've said that there's surveillance in progress, which basically says, please don't steal from us, or you might get caught. You're setting up that there's value there. So we understand that there's value there, and it becomes more interesting. Now, with the lockers being opaque, you would obviously have to, try to get into all of the lockers. The fact that these lockers are clear, the surveillance was not obvious. So it didn't actually have, it didn't say you're on camera or anything like that. So there's lockers, they're clear, you can see what's in them. It's obvious to anyone who walks by that these lockers contain product, and they have keypads on them. And the assumption is, of course, that if it has a keypad on it, and if they're advertising that it's there, look, this is loaded with goodies, but no, it's got a keypad on it. Obviously, it's locked. Well, that's the assumption. At least it's a logical assumption. And technically, it's not one that I would rely too heavily upon, because you can only rely on the assumptions that you form being similar to the assumptions that other people who are like you would form. This extends to like self-defense and stuff like that. If you haven't watched that video, what is it? How Predators Push Lines, I think it's called. But the idea is that you project the expectation. You create an expectation in the other person, and then you subvert that expectation. What is particularly humorous is if I'm communicating with this other person for fulfillment of their order. Was that my left back there? No. Maybe. If I'm communicating this way, this dude was literally talking to me on the phone saying, it's going in locker number 2, it will be there, and it will be open. The locker system has a keypad on it. It would have cost absolutely nothing to say, the locker is locked, here's the combination. Similarly, we have an ongoing communication process for my order. It would have been extremely simple to send an email that says, hey, I moved your order. It's over here in locker 2. Here's the code. Like, done. That's it. You might have to reset the code every time, but if you had like 5 codes and you just cycled through them every order or something, you'd probably get a pretty good, probably be okay. It's just like, it's just strange. So the correct move, and this is what the instruction, I guess, is to just try stuff. You know, you never know when something is going to be much easier than you expect. And this is something that is perhaps a problem for me, is I expect things to be difficult. I have some understanding as to how a lot of things work, so it's easy for me to say, it's easy for me to understand why something should be difficult. But that obviously doesn't mean that I'm correct or accurate, or that someone else hasn't gone through a lot of time and effort to make it much more easy. And this is my motto, the Troy Fletcher quote, just try stuff, TM, Troy Fletcher, 2019, colorized. That's it, just try stuff. What are you doing? Well, I'm doing this, but, as soon as the but comes out of your mouth, it's like, oh, well, I need to change this and change that. Why is that fake cannon perched here? Why would you make it's for a frat house or something. I picked this item up from downtown, so I'm driving past all this when I normally drive through it at like 30 miles an hour, so I can actually see stuff now that there's traffic. The same kind of thing happens when my wife's driving. So when my wife's driving, I get to look at stuff in places that I would never get to look before. Normally, if you come up on an intersection, you look one direction before proceeding, and if someone else is driving, you get to look the other direction. And I surprise myself frequently by finding stuff that way. But that's a distraction. There's a fake cannon. Like, this is Kentucky. Shouldn't you be able to have a real cannon out there? All I'm saying is I want a Parrott rifle. I think that's okay. The idea is that you push on this stuff, is that you expect that it's going to be wrong, but leave open the possibility that everything goes better than expected. Everything was easier than expected, like surprisingly easy. Because sometimes it'll happen, and if you leave space for that, you won't be horrendously embarrassed after oh nice you won't be horribly embarrassed after you actually sit down and like drink 5 Mountain Dews and an espresso, and then you're like, all right, I'm gonna do this, and it's gonna suck, but I'm gonna do it. We're biting the bullet. We're gonna take care of business. Here we go. And then you start, and then 5 minutes later you're done, and you're like, how much effort and time did I spend worrying and dreading and elevating my cortisol levels over this task when it was so bloody simple, and I got it done so quickly. Now, obviously this doesn't happen all the time, but no, that's not the right thing to say. It happens more times than you would expect. It is surprising the amount of times that it happens. That you sit down and actually do the work. You actually start, hacking at some code, and it just starts working, and you're like, wow, really? So, the lesson is, the world is made of assumptions. Or your world, I should say, because it is the lens through which you view the world. And you apply those assumptions unconsciously. You're just sitting there. You're just sitting there thinking of the world, looking through your filtered lens, going, oh boy, I'm the only one who can really see all this stuff. Acknowledging your own filters and acknowledging your own preconceptions. There's stuff you can't even see, even when you're looking through stuff. The only possible way to get out of that paradigm is to give that reality a little bit of a push. And sometimes, you'll get your finger will get bitten, but sometimes your expectations just vanish. your expected reality, I should say, is what vanishes. Because you think that the world is a certain way, or maybe just a whole bunch of other people have told you that the world is a certain way. This is kind of like the free your mind stuff of, you just have to be able to question the stuff that you haven't touched yourself. You have to be able to ask the question, and you have to be able to poke. If you're not willing to poke, then you're just like everyone else, I guess. You know, you're cattle being led around by anyone who either is doing the poking or is reporting information from other people who claim to have done the poking. It's like all this physics stuff. It's like, oh, well, is physics wrong about this? Or is this true that this is the way that this works? Like, think about it a little bit. Maybe connect with some people online. Be like, hey, if I wanted to test this at home, would that be possible? Oh, no, it's very complicated. Well, you wouldn't be able to do it. But an approximation, perhaps. Like, just a test. What would I have to do for something like that? Well, I suppose you could set up a mock-up doing something like this. It wouldn't be 100% accurate, but, you know, I don't know what it is. It's like a feedback loop of people trying to maintain a status quo. I don't understand it. Or at least not wanting to have their worldview challenged, and I definitely understand that. But the idea that you can see a reality, you can have, I guess to boil it down even further, that you might, you can have a goal, you can see a path to the goal, and you either observe or imagine obstacles, or even hypothesize. Yeah, I guess it would be a hypothetical hypotenuse. You hypothesize of obstacles. You know, you see, you observe obstacles, you hypothesize obstacles, you predict obstacles, as in something that could happen after the fact. And that is the paradigm that you operate within. And without being someone who will actually perform the test, you know, I said you observe the obstacle, and you might walk up to the obstacle and go, well, this is just a cardboard. This is a piece of cardboard sitting right here. I thought this was, brick. No, it's just cardboard. Oh, okay. You know, well, the door is very thick. Oh, it's rotted. You just push it and it bends. It falls apart. I'm speaking metaphorically, of course, but there's so much that would be improved if we just had the ability or the freedom of mind, I guess, to just poke a little bit. What expectations do you have which prevent you from performing something that you're interested in, or trying to figure out, or you think would be kind of a next level of your professional career or anything like that, or even your family life? It's like, well, yeah, I guess we could do something like that, maybe, but here's why it wouldn't work. It's like, but what if you just tried? What if you just did? You know? And I'm not talking about like moving to Uganda or something like that. I'm talking about just kind of getting out of your comfort zone, because your comfort zone is the zone that you've created with all those expectations. Is this abstract enough? I feel like this is making no sense. But I'll get to listen to this later and be like, what the hell are you talking about, Troy? You cray. No, it's not cray. It's not crazy. I'm not. Whatever. I've lost the train of thought here. This is legit. I mean this, because this is something that has helped me very much. That and knowing when to quit and come back later. Like, you can't lose if you never quit, because as long as you don't quit, you're still playing the game. Even if you're 0 for 500, you're still playing the game, and there's still a possibility that you could win. And there's the compounding aspect of every bit of your every loss mounting as experience. So you create this I don't want to say a snowball. It's not a snowball. You're just contributing to it could be like a statistical snowball, though, because if you if you only have to win one time, and you play the game 5 times and you have a 5% chance of winning, well, you're probably not going to win. But if you play 100 times, you got a better chance. If you play 1,000, if you play 1,000,000, there is a statistical aspect to it where you just keep pushing at it. And the whole you never quit, you never lose if you never quit idea is just kind of it's let's see. It's like I don't know. It's like a mentality that facilitates your ongoing development and ongoing practice towards something. Because if you think about it as the one attempt, then yeah, you tried and you failed. But if you think about it as practice, then you get the opportunity to have some practice. I tried to build a keyboard, and it was good practice. You go out hunting, and you don't find anything, you don't even see anything, and when I come back, I just say I had a good day hiking. It was good hunting practice. You didn't get skunked, you didn't fail, you just tried, and it was good practice. And that's it's a healthy mind state to be in. I'm trying to think of what it's like. A frame of reference. If you view the action from one frame of reference, then it's negative and it's bad and you failed. But if you view the exact same action from another frame of reference, then you practiced and you tried, and you know what? You didn't lose the game 0-49. You lost the game, 3-49. You lost the game 7-56. It's 56? Yeah, 56. And you can measure improvement there. And even if you can't measure improvement, experience just compounds. Maybe that was the point I was trying to make, is you can't keep doing something and get worse at it. Yeah. I suppose probably in some... Generally, let's say, okay? If you know what you're doing... If you have some idea of what your goal is, and you're trying to achieve it, you can't practice and get worse. You're going to figure out stuff that doesn't work. You're going to adapt, possibly out of sheer frustration, or a complete loss of ideas. You're like, I don't even know what to do at this point. I'm just going to try something crazy, and then stuff works. You'd be surprised. So, I don't know how to translate this into... all of this is rather abstract. I'm saying all this so that you can take a problem that you're trying to figure out and wedge it into this mold that I'm trying to create here. But this stuff is true, and this stuff, it's a universal reality that if you keep pushing on something, you make progress. And also, almost by definition, if you never quit, you never lose. You can never lose. And the statistical element of it, if you want to accomplish a thing, don't try it for the first time and only do it once with no practice, and then fail and be like, what? Surprised Pikachu face. How is this possible? The other thing that's really cool, aside from the compounding experience, is that some of this stuff, in fact, a lot of this stuff, especially in any kind of technical field, well, in any professional field, really, maybe just all stuff, it all transfers. It transfers to other similar fields, I guess. I can attempt to learn something about keyboards and attempt to learn how to make my own keyboard and fail, but in the process learn a whole bunch of information about mice. And now maybe I want to look into making a mouse. And then I learn a whole bunch of stuff about a mouse, and then it fails. And I wind up learning some stuff about USB hubs. So like, all right, well, what kind of USB hub circuitry is there? What kind of, are there any published circuit diagrams for USB hubs? And now I go back and like, well, what if I try to integrate this into a keyboard controller? And then you can fail at that, and then pick up something else, and then keep going. It's, you know, it's I don't want to say it's as simple as just practice stuff, but like, if you almost have nothing to lose by just trying stuff. You know, you don't want to find out if you can fly by jumping off the Grand Canyon, but you can test that earlier. You know, and nowadays all of this stuff is so inexpensive, and your computers are so powerful that you can just simulate a lot of this stuff. You can play with this stuff for almost nothing. It's extremely inexpensive to just mess around with this stuff, possibly even free, just with what you already have. And then wherever you can't do it, or you can't make it with for free, then you figure out a way to do it with the resources that you already have. You know, that's, the resourcefulness is much more valued than having someone else being able to do it for you. And it's like I said that before, that redneck engineering is the best engineering, because you have a finite supply, you have certain products, and your certain resources, and you need to figure out how to turn that into, you know, a liquid pump or something like that. And then you're adapting, you're adjusting, you're figuring out new things, and you're making cool stuff. And no, it's not going to be super polished, and no, it's probably not going to be very man, this looks nice. It's not going to be super fancy or anything, but it'll work. And you know what else? It'll work for probably free, you know, cheap or free. Is those paddles? I can't really make those out. Not great light. Just YouTube the cherry paddles. My video should come up. Those are open source, by the way. Just grab the STLs and get them printed, play around with them. So I don't know that, like, you know, the 3D printing stuff, it's like, I guess I could mess around with something like that. Like, it was always just like dipping my big toe into these new technologies, and like, maybe I'll put my foot in, and maybe I'll try, and then like kind of lose interest, or maybe you have a I was gonna say fail. You have a less than optimal experience, and then you just back off and you go and do something else, and then later you're like, wonder if I could do something like that using that thing that I messed around with, that thing that I failed at earlier. And then you kind of have a renewed excitement to go back into it and get over that next hump, get over that next hill. I mean, I hope this is of some value. The thing to keep in mind is this is all based on my personal experience, and my personal experience is I'm an autodidact in all of this stuff. I taught myself all this stuff, and I definitely failed a lot. I had a horrible time even just getting Linux installed on my old Franken PC when I was 16, and we didn't have the internet. I mean, we had the internet, but you didn't have the vast technical resources online. I would go to the bookstore with a notebook and read books that I couldn't afford to figure out how to troubleshoot my Linux install at home. You know, all this electrical engineering stuff, it was all completely foreign to me. And now I wade a little bit deeper into the pool. I learn a little bit more every time. And when I get frustrated, I leave. And hopefully I come back. Usually I come back. I think that space also helps out a lot, because I've learned that, at least for me, giving an idea space to just kind of roll around in your noggin for a little bit makes a big difference. Because if you can't force it, and I've done my share of trying to force stuff to happen, if you can't force it in, you know, an extra 2 hours, you're probably not going to force it. And even if you did, you probably made other mistakes along the way, because you just you get kind of flustered, and you get confused, and you lose focus. And even if things start working, there's a pretty good chance they'll stop working again later. So taking breaks and backing off of stuff just to let your brain solve some of the stuff in the background helps a lot too. And what's interesting about that is, if you apply that idea to the original concept of just, you know, pushing on that reality of seeing the situation and going, well, clearly here's why it wouldn't work, but what if, you know, you're like, well, that would never work, but what if I did? You know, what if I did try? Well, what would be the thing I could try? You know, this has been tried and failed before. Okay, but what if there was a way to do it? And then your brain just kind of works in the background, and you'll wake up in the middle of the night and be like, what if we did it like this? Or what if we tried a different market for this? Like, what if you kind of combined these technologies to get it to work? I don't know, you come up with weird ideas, but only when your brain has all the problems, all the elements of the problem. Once you have all those elements, and you give your brain the free rein to be able to question those elements, to ponder the possibility that there actually is an answer to this, and it might be a good one. If you open that possibility, your brain will work on stuff, you know? But you got to give it that opportunity, and you got to give it the space, and you got to give it the knowledge. That's all I got.